Hey friends, this is Sam, and I'm super excited you guys are here for our second segment of our fresh start. As we roll into this new year, me and Molly had a mission to really sharing some key insights to making you, or mostly giving you an opportunity to set yourself up for success. So, my name is Sam. If you don't know who I am, I'm a personal trainer and certified wellness coach. We are here joined here by the great Molly Roth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Roth. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Texas and functional nutritional therapy practitioner.
Awesome, awesome. So today our focus, as last week, if you haven't caught up to it, don't worry, you can catch the replay. We're talked about habits, and today what we're going to be tackling is obstacles. We realize that when it comes into this year, to think that our goals are just going to be simply easy or that we can avoid the obstacles wouldn't be realistic. So we want to realize that if you're running into barriers and obstacles, the first thing we need to let you know is that's normal, right, Molly?
Absolutely.
Yes, and one of these key quotes that I just heard here recently says, obstacles don't mean you're failing, they just mean that you're human. And I really want you to leave here, if anything, with that realizing the setbacks and the challenges are just simply part of life and that you're not alone in that journey.
Yeah. Well, and when we're making changes, we have to expect that it's going to be difficult sometimes because if we could do it, right, we probably would have already been doing it. So if we're trying to do something different, we have to expect there's going to be something that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yes, I love that. I love like what you said right there is having an expectation. I think many times, like you said, we're planning, we're doing everything we can to avoid the obstacles. But I love something you said, which is so powerful, is anticipating it, right? Like imagine if you knew there was going to be a roadblock, you're probably not going to hit it every time, right? Eventually, you're going to realize I'm going to find a way to get around it, and that's what we're hoping that you can find here today. And a question of clarity that I really want you guys to, as you're listening to this, is to enter into this. I want you to ask yourself this question: what obstacles keep showing up for me right now? And I think it's a great question of clarity as we starting to focus on obstacles, Molly.
Yeah, I think we're just about that. Maybe we're still in the phase with the New Year's resolution where we're feeling very motivated, but for some of us, it's like the first full week of the year, and may even start to feel some of that tension we're butting up against of trying to stick with a new habit, and it's getting hard, right? It's getting challenging. So I think it's a great question, just to in general of what is coming up right now that I'm starting to feel that is getting in the way of my habits.
Man, I really love that. I really love that. And I really had to look at like what is an obstacle really, right? I think that's a great question when we really want to define what an obstacle is. I saw the obstacle as feedback, not so much as punishment. I know for the longest time is we're taught that if we don't get the result we want, we're being punished. What do you think about that, Molly?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea that an obstacle is feedback because I think a lot of times we think of an obstacle being this force outside of our control that's just placed in our path that we have to try to navigate instead of it being a direct result of something that we're inputting into our environment, right? And when we're trying to build a habit, that is the input that we are putting into our environment. We're showing up differently, we're doing something differently, and the obstacle is the response to that doing something differently. So it's a good thing. It means you are making change.
Man, I love that. I love that perspective that you just said right there is that when we are running into those barriers and challenges, that it's a good thing. And I think it's a hard thing to grasp, obviously, when you're in that moment, right? Like, you're like, man, I planned everything out and then I got the flat tire, right? I get on the journey. But I love how you said that, man, you should honestly almost celebrate that the fact that you're doing the work. That means you're starting the process. That's awesome. I love that.
Well, and if you never drive the car on that journey, right, you never have the opportunity to have that flat tire.
Ooh, dang, dropping some wisdom already. Whoa, let's go. I love that because I think that's super important. I love what you said right there because I know it's so simple. We find ourselves, like you said, most of us are in possibly that planning phase of our journey, right? This starting this year off strong and seeking clarity. And I love how you said that. Like it's really part of the journey. I think we try to avoid and we try to make every roadblock, we can plan as good as we can, but I love how you said if you don't even get in the car, you'll never run into obstacles. But most importantly, you will never get to your destination. So I love how you worded that. Like, hey, if you don't move forward, that you're not really gonna give yourself an opportunity to win either way. That's awesome.
Well, and I think that's like maybe the first obstacle that people even face is like getting started. Because I know for a lot of my clients, it's like, oh, I just didn't feel motivated to go to the gym today, or I didn't feel the urge to want to do the thing that I'm trying to develop as a habit. And it's like, the motivation doesn't just come, the motivation comes when we act. The action has to come first, and then the motivation comes.
Man, that is powerful, and I really, really want to highlight that what she said right there is that motivation comes by action. I think many times we get that flip flop, and you hear it many times in self development. A lot, it's like you got to be motivated first, and then you take action. But I love you said that action follows motivation, and many of us are here waiting. Like you said, maybe somebody sat here and said, "I'm going to wait till the New Year's because I'm going to have that motivation to make this year more productive." But I love how you said it really starts with action. And I hope you really highlight that for yourselves as a listener, because maybe you find yourself in that contemplation phase, or you're in that planning phase. And I know for myself personally, I can speak to it. I find myself a lot in what they call, procrastination, right? You can have the best plan, but like Molly said, if you're not taking action, you're not even in the game to set yourself up for success. I love that.
Well, and I think that goes into another obstacle, which is like perfectionism for a lot of people. Like, if I can't do it perfectly, I don't want to do it at all. And it's like, can we invite some imperfect action into the whole process of building a habit? Because when we are building a habit, we don't have the neural connection, we don't have the memory, the reps, right? We don't have the reps in yet of that new habit, so it's gonna be imperfect. And starting to make a habit from a place of being okay that it's going to be imperfect, and it should be imperfect because we've never done this before.
I love something you said there, which is so powerful. It's like it's a habit, but like you said, it's something we've never done before. And maybe somebody listening to this, Molly, has maybe from your expertise, have you? I was thinking about maybe somebody's listening to this and like, you know what, man, I know the habit that I need to get there, but I keep finding myself running into the same roadblock over and over and over. Why do you feel like some people just run into that same roadblock?
Well, I think a lot of it is, it starts mentally, before it's actually the action that we're doing. I think a lot of it can be limiting beliefs of, what we think we deserve, or what we think we're capable of, or what other people have told us we're capable of. Um, but also, we have to make sure we're really in alignment with the thing that we are trying to change, right, within ourselves. If you're trying to lose weight, which is a really common goal, and get working out as a common habit to try to build at the beginning of the year, if you're not in alignment with being a person who works out consistently, right, and adopting that into your identity, then it's probably not going to be successful or long lasting, because you don't really actually believe that you can even be that person, right?
Man, that is so powerful. I really love that mindset shift you said there, because many people, like you said, we're trying to set those habits like we did last week, and we're running into these obstacles, but we're still not building like you talked about last week of that strong foundation of just simply having that belief that you can be that person that you want to be. So we find ourselves in those roadblocks continually because we don't see ourselves as the version we're wanting to become. And I
Yeah.
want to share a quote here that I think is super powerful that I heard. It says, "An obstacle isn't a stop sign. We talked about. It's just really information." And I really want you to really ingrain that in you, because I think sometimes we find ourselves when we hit that obstacle. Like, I know I got to be honest with myself. I got to be honest here. I've run into obstacles and I've stopped. I've stopped and said the first thing I said, "Well, it's just not meant for me." And I don't want you to realize that I don't want you to see the obstacle as a stopping point. I want you to really embrace it as like Molly said, it's a celebration. Like, hey, you're in the game, but most importantly, it's just information, but it isn't the answer.
Yeah. Well, and like, what do they always say? Like, when, we're working out, that your brain will give up before your body does, right? Like, your brain is so desperately trying to protect you from harm. And, doing something new can feel like harm to your body because it's unknown, right? We're not sure what's going to happen on the other side of it. And so our brain will try to convince us to stop before it's actually time for us to stop, or even if we should stop. So just knowing that going into this, that your brain is trying to protect you, and that those beliefs that you're feeding into your brain, those beliefs you're choosing to look at, to choose to believe, are going to direct a lot of your behavior.
Ooh, man. Go timing. Hey, that was awesome. I love that. I love that. Your beliefs shape your behavior. And that's so true. And I want to give you listeners a reflection question here, just so kind of slow things down. I really want you to, like, we're not just trying to run through things. We really want you to do the work, because this is what really is where the change happens. So, a little listener reflection. I want to say, I want you to think about this. Is this obstacle protecting me, or is it preventing my growth? I think that's a good clarity question of when it comes to, as we start to establish some of those obstacles you might be running into, is, to ask yourself that question. I'm going to repeat that again to really let that sink in. Is this obstacle protecting me, or is it preventing my growth? You think that's a great question there, Molly?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, looking at the obstacle not as this big scary monster in the closet, but as, a part of the manifestation of our brain, right? Trying to protect us. And a lot of times our brain is very convincing, right? It can tell us we don't have enough time. It can tell us that, it's just not meant to be. It can tell us that, oh, we were never going to succeed anyways. And if we choose to believe what our brain is telling us, that has so much power over us. I mean, but on the flip side, when we choose to challenge what our brain is telling us with evidence, with what we know to be true about our situation, right? We can also direct our body and our brain towards a different outcome, right? We have that power.
Yes, wow, I really love that. I really love that, the fact that we're talking about the brain, because I think many times, when we think of obstacles, the first obstacle we looked at was like we talked about, like the roadblock, the stop sign, the brick wall. But I love how you're talking about, those internal obstacles that we have. And I really want to give that's this little focus right here, is what internal. I want you to ask yourself, as a listener here today, what internal obstacles show up most often for you? And I really had to take, so when I heard this question for myself, I was like, man, what internal options, obstacles do I run into? Like Molly was talking about, what the brain is telling me, what my beliefs or limitations that I place on myself. And I did find myself a lot of limiting beliefs last year. And I realized, like Molly said earlier, I was trying to build on a shaky foundation, right? Because my habits weren't matching the person that I was planning to become. And I realized that, yeah, she was talking about last week, is, building that strong foundation with my habits, but not only just shaping my habits, but having that goalpost of becoming that person I want. So I think that's so powerful, like you talked about, is really focusing on those internal obstacles, because those are so important. I think they get overlooked. We're so focused on the outside that really that foundation is built on the inside. I love that.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too, because I think, like, if we even look at obstacles, I mean, there's probably like 1% of actual physical obstacles that are keeping us from our goals. Like, I probably think 99% of our obstacles start with our beliefs, right? We think we don't have enough time, right? We think we don't have enough motivation, right? We are overwhelmed, right? We're too tired, right? I didn't drink enough water. It's the perfectionism thinking. But all of these things are like starting from within us, right? They're starting from our belief system. I mean, when's the last time you heard someone gave up going to the gym because someone was standing in front of their door and wouldn't let them get out of their house, right? Or, someone was standing in front of their car, wouldn't let them leave, or, someone's barricading the gym, right? Like, those aren't typically the reasons why our habits fall off or our resolutions fall off. It starts with ourselves and what we're telling ourselves about our situation, right?
So true, so true. I love that, because I want to share this quote that right here when it comes to like obstacles. It says, like Molly was just talking about, the loudest obstacles are often invisible. And I saw that quote. I was like, that's so true. It's like you said, it's really starts within. And but Molly, I want to ask you this question with the expertise that you have. You know, how do you feel like the self talk create or remove obstacles? How does our own personal self talk, create those obstacles for us, or even help us remove them? Would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, like I was saying, like, our behavior follows our thoughts, right? And so if we are building ourselves up and we are telling ourselves, that we can do this, and that it's possible and change can happen and I can be this new person, our behavior will fall in line with that. But if we are saying the opposite and saying you can't do this, you're stupid for trying, you're never going to be good enough, I mean, it's going to be adding even more resistance to actually coming through on that habit, because you're not even your system isn't even in agreement with whatever habit you're trying to form, right? And so if our actions follow our beliefs, then we have to also be making sure we're mindful of what beliefs are surrounding the habit that we're trying to change, right? Or we're trying to adopt.
Ooh, that is awesome. I love that. I love that. And that's so true. And you see that in with most factors of change, right? I love how you said, our actions follow our habits. But I really, like you said, at the end of the day, it's like, what are we surrounding ourselves with? What is that environment? And I think that's what's so powerful about groups in general. And just, when you surround yourself with people that have that same goal, whether it just be with nutrition or fitness or just, I think many times, like if you find yourself in a situation where you almost feel like you're running to that same roadblock, those invisible roadblocks of where you're like, man, I just can't get to that next level, but you realize you set this fitness goal right, and everyone around you is like, why are you wanting to do that? Like when you have, I found myself in many situations where everybody was questioning the goal that I had for myself, and I realized that many times, when everyone else was questioning it, I started to question it myself. I'm like, why am I doing this? And when you change your environment, you do truly change your life. It's so awesome. I love that.
Well, you were asking earlier about like why do people kind of fall off? Like they'll keep trying the same thing again and again and again, and it doesn't work. And one thing I thought of too was like because they didn't have the accountability and support, right? They were trying to do it by themselves and maybe they weren't telling anyone. So no one was really asking them about that change they're trying to make, and there was really no accountability there. And I think when you let people know of a habit you're trying to form and you go and find a community to support you into making those changes, there's way more higher of a chance that you're going to stick with that habit, because now it's not just about you, but you've invited all of these other people on this journey with you, right? And they're going to be checking in on you, and there's that bit of peer pressure, but in a good way, to keep up that habit, because now people know you and know this habit that you're trying to adopt or trying to change.
Yes, I love that. And that's so true. And I think it's something like I realized like for myself, and I love something you really said there is finding that community that's going to allow you to have that accountability. But I think what's something so much more important, we don't realize like as humans is everybody feels like everybody wants to be the star player, right? But you're so much more powerful when you're in a group. I think it's hard as adults, right? As an adult, you become like, I'm my own adult. I do everything by myself. But I realize like it's honestly that's where we need connection even more. I feel like as we grow older and we get more knowledge, we need more community. I don't know what happened. I feel like it's just as you grow up, it just doesn't happen. As a kid, you're always playing. As an adult, you're just like you got to schedule it. It has to make it a priority. You have to kind of, like Molly said, make that initiative yourself to find those communities of people that are moving in the direction that you want. Because if you find yourself at this point of the, like last year, where you're like, man, I felt like every time I had an uphill battle, every time I was coming under resistance, I realized it's almost like Molly said, when you have a group, you're not fighting against the current. It's like almost people are pulling you up. And that is what I think is so powerful about having that community support, like Molly said.
Yeah, I mean, as human beings, we are wired to connect with other people. That's just part of our DNA, is to be in a group. I mean, and in tribal times, that's how people survived, right? You didn't survive being a solo, person out in the wild, but you survive in a group because you have each other's back, you have support, you have emotional and social connection, all things that we absolutely need to thrive.
Man, I love that. And I really want to share a quote exactly what we're talking about here. It says, you don't need the perfect conditions, you just need a supportive one. And I think that's such a powerful statement in itself. Like, if you reflect on your last year, have you found yourself a supportive community or a support system along your journey? Or like we were talking about, like there, Molly said, we are made for connection. Did you find yourself on this journey trying to go at it alone and wondering why you felt burnt out, like we talked about, wondering why you felt so lonely, wondering why you are on the same hamster wheel and you just can't get off? Because maybe you just haven't had the support you need. And this could be the year that you find it. But most importantly, I realize as an adult, you're going to have to ask for it.
Yeah. And who we surround ourselves, I don't think we realize it's not just an abstract emotional thing. Like, we are literally, our emotional states and our physiology creates energy within ourselves, and energy at different frequencies that you can measure, right? And if you are around people who are super negative, who are super critical, who are depressed, who are just focused on the negative, that will influence you even if you're doing all the right things. Like, there's a study that they did with plants where, they gave them like positive affirmations and like just love and kindness, and then they have these plants that they were yelling at and critical of, and that's all they changed between the two of them. They got watered the same, they had the same amount of light, but it was just that difference. The plants that got all the positive feedback thrived, they grew exponentially, and they were just living their best life. And then the plants that were getting yelled at and critical and negative, they were withered and they were dying and rotting. And that just shows you the power of who you are around and the people who are in your network and your group. It makes the difference.
So powerful. I love that analogy as well. It's so true about your environment. Like, is your environment speaking life into you, or is it speaking death, or is or is it not conducive at all? Like, I really love that because that's so true in every action and decision you make each and every day is either watering the plant, the seed, or is it, drying it up. And I think that's a great thing that you said right there. It's so true. So I really want, as we go into obstacles, I feel like, I know for me personally, I had to really ask myself, are these limits, are these really obstacles really limiting me? Or are these really just excuses? How do we kind of differentiate between the two, would you say?
Well, they're absolutely excuses. I mean, our brain is very creative, right? And it doesn't mean they're not legitimate excuses. Like, maybe I am really tired. Maybe I don't have the time, right? But the problem is when we don't try to come up with solutions and we don't try to problem solve with our thoughts and we're just accepting that as our reality. I think that's the really damaging part of excuses, right? Is they can just stop us dead in our tracks when we're trying to build momentum. And we have to have a strategy to combat, even the excuses that seem helpful, right? Especially if that goal is something that, or that habit is something that we really want.
I really love that because I love how you said our brain is so creative. And I think that's super important right there to really realize like, I think many times, everybody's like everything's an excuse. But I love how she said, hey, you got to give yourself some grace through that process and realizing that, hey, like we're talking about, you're going to be doing a lot of new things this year. This is a new year. You're going to be everything technically from this point forward is something new. Regardless of if it's something you've done before, it's a new year. You have new obstacles. You're going to have new climates. Not everything is going to be the exact same. But I love something you said there, which I think is so powerful, is that your body's creative, that your mind is so creative, and it can play tricks on you, like Molly said. It can talk you out of things that you are well capable of doing. So, like you said, it's awesome.
Well, and I think like we can look at the excuses or obstacles, right? And we can, I just forgot what I was going to say.
Me too. What? I gotta. This is the best moment. This is not possible. I'm just joking. But like you were talking about, they are. It's like that's how it is. That is exactly how it is. You can't anticipate everything, and you like you said, your mind's gonna create things, and there's gonna be a lot of people out there gonna be like, it's always an excuse, and we're in this hardcore society that tells you, you got to keep grinding, you got to keep pushing. But I think it's really slowing down and having clarity, and that's really gonna allow you to really realize what your true limits are. Like if it's something new and you don't have any experience in it, you're probably going to have to ask some help. You just, if you've never swam before, you're not just going to jump in the pool, right? And expect to swim. You're going
Yeah.
to ask for help to learn how to do that. And I think, like, if you're tackling a goal that's just something outside of your wheelhouse, like, I'm going to give you guys some honest what I'm doing. I want to become a public speaker. Well, I realize that I'm going to have to ask for help. So it's something I've never done before. I had to ask the right people. And maybe you find yourself in this year looking for something that you've never done before. Well, you know what's so great? We got technology, but we also have people that have done it before you. And I want you to realize that most of these things that you see something that somebody's done, you can do it because they had to learn. And if they learned it, you can do it too.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say. Okay. So we can look at the brain and the obstacles or excuses, right, as a way to tell us, like, we can choose how we respond to that, right? Like, we can choose
Yeah.
how we respond to that excuse, and we can choose to see that as, like you said, information, right? And what we decide to do with that information, because a lot of times our brain is telling us to slow down because we're giving it too much input, right? Or it can be telling us that we're pushing too hard and that we need to take rest days, right? And so there's ways that we can use the excuses that the brain is giving us as indicators of when to kind of ease off the gas and when to go for it, right? Like, it can help us kind of manage the cadence of the daily steps towards that habit. It doesn't have to be a stop sign, but it's feedback to help direct us to how, like, what step to take in the moment to still stay on that goal. Like, for example, if I'm trying to work out but I haven't lifted in a really long time or ever, and I'm super, super sore, like, but I still want to have that daily habit to practice. Can I stretch? Can I go for a walk? Right? Is there a way that I can still be doing working out in a way that fits kind of the excuses, right? The excuses that my body is giving me, which are valid excuses. It's like we're tired and sore, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love how you said that, you just rewire it as feedback. Realize it's part of the journey, and that, that's we can accept it for that and give ourselves some grace. Like you said, like, I'm actually tired. This is something I've never done before. So I love that you said giving yourself some grace in that process. I think that's super important, especially when you run into those obstacles that you've never seen before.
Mhm.
So I want to give you guys listeners just a question here of reflection of kind of when we talked about those obstacles. What part of this is under my control? And I think that's a great question for awareness. Like, what are you truly in control of when it comes to those obstacles? And I think it's a great question as we kind of, when we focus in on, identifying some of our obstacles.
Yes, absolutely. Because if we are focusing on the things that we can't control, then we are going to be so overwhelmed because so much is out of our control, right? Like, we have a lot in our control, but way more is out of our control. So if we try to focus on the things that we can't even make change on, we're going to get discouraged so much quicker, right? We're going to have more of those internal obstacles that are going to come up. But if I can focus on what I can do today, there are action steps that can be taken, right? Those are things that I can actively be doing or not doing in the moment to help support my goals.
I love that. So true, so powerful. So true, so powerful. So, like, Wally, like, I really love, we identified some of our obstacles where it was internal and external. But realistically, there's going to be times on this road when you get into obstacles where you're going to find yourself getting stuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we really want to talk about how to try to really move through that. And when it comes to, running into those obstacles, Molly, where people get stuck, why do people freeze when, these obstacles do appear? Why would you think we freeze when obstacles appear?
It's a great question. And I can go just kind of off of personally. Like, I personally freeze when I meet an obstacle because I didn't prepare for it, right? I thought it was going to be so easy. I thought, oh, I've done hard things before. I can do this. That I wasn't really thinking through the steps and what could potentially come up. But I mean, a lot of times we're not going to have that opportunity, right? A lot of times we're not going to know what obstacles that could be there. But I think that just when something happens that is not planned for, or it doesn't go perfectly to plan, that can cause, just an initial reaction because it's just something unplanned. But I think it's how we respond to that startle, right? How we respond to that pause when we meet the friction, when we meet the obstacle, right? And that tells everything about how successful you're going to be about meeting that goal and getting around that obstacle. Because there's a lot of things you can do. You can see that obstacle and then turn around and go back and give up, right? You can choose to drill right through that obstacle and, barrel through it. You can choose to jump over it. You could choose to have a friend come and help you pick it up and move it out of your way, right? But that's all stuff that's within our control, right? That is all things that, when we think about the things that we can control in our life, how we respond to an obstacle is 100% in our control. Even when we don't think it is, how the meaning that we take from that obstacle is 100% in our control. And if we see that obstacle as meaning that we can't do something or it's not meant for us, then that is that turning around and giving up. But if we can shift that to mean something different that allows us to move forward, then any obstacle we meet, we can choose to respond in a different way. We can choose to get through it and still head towards our goal.
Man, I really love that, and like I, for personal experience as well, I feel the same way. I feel like many of the times that I felt stuck was, it was like you said, it was something new, something I hadn't prepared for. And there's gonna be a lot of challenges and things like Molly said. Like you could have planned, you could have read all the books, but you're gonna run into those challenges that are things that you've never done before. But I love, like Molly talked about, when you run into those challenges, it should be almost a celebration because hey, you're in the game, you're doing the work. That means you're in the game, and that just challenges and obstacles are simply going to be a part of the process, but they're not something to deter you. It's just something that's just part of the process. So I really love that. So I think it's so powerful too, is like we were talking about, when you find yourself getting stuck and how we can really move forward through it. I like to say it's really about taking those small steps instead of those big leaps. I know we're running into some big goals this year. You're like, this is going to be the year everything changes. Maybe you're following some people that are years ahead of you, and you see what they're doing, and you're like, I need to be there. But we didn't get to see the tiny micro steps they took to get there. And so I want you to really, when it comes to your goals and when it comes to coming to obstacles, because you're going to face them, it's about, I wouldn't, if I saw it, I like to think about those videos where it's always funny, right? There's kids playing in the water and there's like a big puddle, right? And they jump in the puddle and you see the guy go all the way down. You're like, what? That just looked like it was a surface little puddle, but he dove, he falls into this like deep hole. And I think many of us, we go into our goals looking at them like, oh, it's a little puddle. We take that little step and then we just dive on in, and we wondering why we're drowning and feel overwhelmed. And I think it's so powerful is when you run into those obstacles, we're not saying to stop. We're saying just to slow down, like Molly said, find clarity along the way, ask for help, but take those small steps would lead to your goal. I think it's just, trusting the process, not rushing the process. What would you say?
Absolutely. And I think too, we can try to take on too much at the beginning of the year, especially, but sometimes when we're making a habit, it's like we're not okay with just one. We want to do five. And it's already setting us up to not be successful because we're trying to already do something hard, which is doing something different, and then taking on multiple of that. And then the other thing that we can do is make it extra complicated. So let's say we do just pick one habit, but we make it super complicated and difficult. Like, I want to work out, but I don't want to just work out. I want to go to this CrossFit gym that's across town. It takes me an hour to get there, right? And they're only open between like 9 a.m. and 10 a.m., right? Like, it's, you have a small window of time. And the more we complicate it, right, it's the same as if taking on a ton of habits, it's going to overwhelm your system, right? And there's ways that we can break this down and do it in small chunks. It's going to be sustainable, but it's being willing to not do as much, right? It's going to be being willing to do the simple thing, even if it seems silly. Because I mean, like, for people learning to brush their teeth, I'm sure that was really overwhelming at first, right? And a lot of us learn as kids, but like, when you brush your teeth every day over time, you get your reps in, and then it's like you don't even think twice about it. It's just something that you do, when you before you go to bed or first thing in the morning. And it's being willing to do the simple thing, even if it seems silly, right? Because what really makes you get that to that goal is that consistency. It's that consistent habit over time. And the more simple that we can make it for our brain, the more likely it is to stick.
Man, that is so powerful. I really love that. I love that. Like you said, I think it's so simple. It's so easy to do that. Like you said, to overbear ourselves. We're like, man, I have these big plans. I'm stacking 18 goals on top of themselves. But I love how you said it's really about simplifying the process to really set ourselves up for success, not making it as challenging as it has to be. I think many times, when we are going after something new, we think it has to be challenging, but I love what you said right there. It's that small actions over time and that consistency in the habit that really equals change. But I really love the fact that you said you can find joy along the process. I think many times when we are going into something new, the first thing we already know it's going to be hard because it's something new. But like you said, we add every hard aspect. We has to be, we're like, we embrace it, make it as challenging as possible for us when we could really simplify it, just like you said, with those simple techniques of just finding the joy along the way and realizing that I don't have to eat the whole elephant at one time. I can just take it one simple bite at a time. I love that. So
Yeah.
powerful.
And I think when we are picking that one habit to work on, I think having specificity, right? Like having it be
Yeah.
specific as possible is helpful. But when it overcomplicates the habit, that is where it can really become problematic and become an obstacle. Because I think we are more likely to commit to something if there is a specific day, if there's a specific place that we know, right? We're not saying we're just going to work out sometime. We're going to work out Monday at 6:30 a.m. at the gym, at this specific gym. So I think that there is benefit in doing that. I think, they talk about the SMART goals and, right, you want to make specific, measurable, all of that. But it's when we overcomplicate it for our brain that it becomes an obstacle.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I want to share a quote while we're on this, talking about these habits. We're talking about, this quote says, movement creates clarity. I think that was such a powerful quote because I think, many times we're looking to have the full plan in front of us. But it's kind of like Molly said, as we take those steps, things become clear. And maybe you found yourself with those goals, that maybe your goals this year aren't as clear as you want them to be at the point. But I love that you're talking about taking that action along the way and trusting the plan that will get a little bit clearer along the path.
It's so funny. I had such a experience with this recently where I was like praying for clarity on something, like praying about it every night. But I realized like I hadn't been taking any action on it. I hadn't been taking any steps forward, just praying for clarity to just somehow magically pop into my head. And then I started taking some action, some different ideas, things towards this goal and thing I wanted clarity on. And the clarity came in the doing, in the something failing, in something working out is where I found the clarity, right? It wasn't like the clarity just came first. It was through action and through like trial and error and seeing what works and what doesn't work that you get the clarity, right? That's how it comes. It doesn't come from being stagnant. It doesn't come from not making a decision. You have to act and then from that action you learn, right? And you can apply it to your next action. But if you never move, if you never take that first step, you'll never be clear. You'll never get the answers because, right? There's nothing there to work with, right? There's no evidence to work with.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And it's so true. I found that many times in myself as well. Like you said, we can plan, we can read all the books, but it's like until I took that step, I'm gonna be honest with a lot of things that you're gonna figure out like real quick, like I actually don't want to do that. There's some things you're like, you know what, I wanted this goal, but then like, I started moving towards, I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's like Molly said, it's movement gave her that clarity. And maybe you find yourself this year in that phase of planning, hoping, wishing, dreaming. But it's like Molly said, until you take that leap, until you start taking that step, that clarity that you seek is right there on the other side. That's awesome. I love that.
And our brain always likes to overcomplicate things when we're in the planning phase too. So just keep that in mind that your brain is going to tell you you have to have another certification or you just need one more thing. You need the new couch. You need just the new shirt, whatever. It's going to do whatever it can to delay you taking action because of fear of the unknown. And so if you just take the action, you will see what you actually need to support that habit. And that it's only going to come with that first step, though.
Man, that's so powerful. And can you please get out of my head? Okay. Like, hey, hey, get out of
I'm
my
right
head.
there with you. I am right there with you. The decision paralysis is real, right? Where you're like, you're feeling like, I just need more education. I just need more training. I just need that one mentorship. And then I'll finally feel good enough and I'll finally feel ready enough. But you know what? When you get a client and they're paying you money, you become ready very, very fast, right? You figure it out because now there is real motivation and you actually see what that person actually needs from you. Because I mean, you could come up with the greatest course ever, but if you never sell it and put it out there, it does nothing, right? You've earned nothing from that. But think about all the people who have just created things on the fly because they were willing to just be in that place of discomfort of not knowing, right? And rising to the occasion. But if you don't ever try, you don't ever just take the action step, you never know what you're capable of.
Mic
Sam?
drop. Mic. Hey, hey, get in my head. Get in my head. Mic drop. Mic drop. But hey, listeners, I want you to give you this question of reflection here. Question of reflection. So as we were talking about those obstacles, I want you to really write this down, or you have the reflection here. It says, "What's one small step I can take today?" And I think it's a powerful thing because maybe, like we were talking about, you're like, man, I'm still planning. But I need you to understand that you can take action today. See that power that you've been waiting for, you already have. Like Molly said, you don't need the new course. She's talking to me, technically, probably. You don't need the new certification, but you have the power right now to do the very thing. But also, like Molly said, taking that small step, what could that next step be? Could it just be that Google search? Could it be, that first post on social media? Could it just be simply telling a friend what you really want to do? It could just be that simple. And that could be the spark that starts that flame.
Yeah. And if you can't take action on the habit, like let's say you can't, afford a gym membership yet, right? Like, can we do things peripherally that maybe remove the obstacles to that habit, right? Like, can we delete social media off of our phones, right? So we don't have the distraction of that. So we have more time. Can we get to bed a little earlier tonight so that we could get up a little earlier tomorrow and maybe go to the gym or go on that walk, right? It doesn't necessarily even have to be action on that habit, but just the distractions or the excuses or the obstacles around that habit. Can we just start knocking those off, right? So then we're already building momentum when we're ready to take that step forward with that habit, right? We've cleared the road. You're ready to go forward.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And that's so true. That's exactly what it is. Like, just that little habit will go a long way, like Molly said. What action can you take today? And I want you to really step into that as well. So now, as we were talking about obstacles, we realized that, we talked about the internal and external obstacles. We talked about, getting stuck and moving through those obstacles. I really want to talk about as your obstacles, as we kind of talked about earlier, is embracing obstacles as teachers, that obstacles really reveal the needs that we need, like reveal the lessons that we need to need, like Molly said, maybe the knowledge that we need to get. But that's what obstacles are there for. The obstacles are your teachers and technically your guides, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, we get to pick the challenges and problems that we want to solve in our life, right? And, each one that we choose to take on is going to lead us down a different road. And, it may not lead us down the road we want to go if we're not being intentional about it, right? Like there's, I definitely don't want to have to solve the problem of failing health later in life, but that can absolutely be one that I do decide to, face because I'm not doing the things now to take care of myself. And I think if we think of it that way, we think about the problems that we actually want to solve. Like, what do I do with all this money I've made because I'm so successful, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's some great problems. Some great problems to have. And I love what you said right there. Is, like that the obstacles, they reveal things to us. Like maybe even just setting boundaries. Like you talked about, like like if I'm, if my environment isn't conducive to my goal, am I gonna need to set some boundaries? Like maybe I don't have a boundary. Like, hey, I'm not gonna eat this anymore, so I don't appreciate if you didn't offer me this, or hey, when I maybe need some quiet time because I'm trying to sleep a little bit long, it's like setting some of those boundaries, maybe, putting your phone on do not disturb, like Molly said, turning social media off at certain times, allowing your brain to rest. it's really starting to, I think obstacles give us that opportunity to not only just be our teachers, but like Molly said, to reveal the things that we need in our lives. I think it's so powerful.
And I think if everything just came easy to us, we wouldn't value it, right? Because I mean, think about like running water is something that most Americans have, and they don't even think twice about it. That it's such a privilege, it's such a gift to have like clean drinking water whenever we want it, right? And it's if we had to work for that water, if we had to climb up a mountain to be able to go get fresh water every day, we would probably value it a whole lot more. And like with everything that we have to work hard for, we will immensely value it in our life that much more, you know? So if everything was easy, we wouldn't value anything. Life would not really have a meaning, right? Because we don't value anything. Everything we want just comes to us.
So true, so true, and I really love that because man, like that's such a true a statement, like you said. It's the things you don't work hard for, you're not going to value as much as as those things that we just naturally get. Oh, wow. And I love how you talked about, that really gives us that information that we need. Like, man, we need to start having a higher level of appreciation when you achieve things. I think many times, we were so quick to move on to the next goal, but when we have those challenges, like, when you climb that mountain, you take that picture, when you achieve those hard things, like, I want you to start thinking about your goal. You want to really strive for those things that you're going to make yourself proud. Because like when you climb that first mountain, is it going to be easier to say next, like I can do that next mountain? I like to think about wins as stacking wins, is technically building your own resume. That's what we get to do in life. We have the greatest gift of we have a choice to build this massive resume for ourselves, and that helps you build your belief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man. So yeah, let me see that's right. So I really love what Molly was saying there because it's kind of really talks about how our obstacles really build resilience through us. Would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because with each one of those things, like let's say the water example, if I know that I have to climb up a mountain to go get water every day, I mean, that's just one task in my day that I've accomplished, right? That feat where you can physically feel that in your body of like that effort that was expended, right? And when we see our effort that leads to the outcome that we're wanting, it builds resilience within us. It expands our capacity for discomfort. And I think we live in a time right now where people don't have a lot of capacity for discomfort,
Mhm.
right? It's very minimal because, we don't have to be uncomfortable as often. We can order things from Amazon that'll come within 2 hours, right? You can pay someone to do something for you. We don't have to face discomfort quite as often as we used to. And so a lot of us don't have the resilience to be uncomfortable. But if we can befriend our discomfort, we can do anything, right? If we're willing to be in that place of discomfort of not knowing, then there really aren't obstacles because that we know that we're going to find a way through them. We are going to find a solution. And I mean, that comes back to the mindset, right? Of just that I can get through an obstacle. I can find a solution to my problems, right? That's all in that resilience.
So powerful and so true, and I really love that. I 100% agree. I think that's that key is why we have obstacles and why people have certain things because they had to work hard for it. I think many times, social media glorifies the end, and we don't get to see the processes in a lot of people's lives. So we tend to diminish the work it took to get there.
Yeah.
And I really think it's I love the fact that we're talking about obstacles today because it's a natural part of life. And I want you to leave here with that, knowing that, man, if you're running into obstacles, you're doing something right because you're taking action. Like if you're not running into obstacles, it's time to start taking some action. You might, if and that's simply obstacles are going to be there waiting for you. Like Molly said, have that anticipation that you're going to have some roadblocks along the way, but that they don't have to define you. Like we talked about, they're just giving you information of where you need to get better. And maybe you find yourself asking, like Molly said, I'm looking for the mentor, I'm looking for the course, but you won't know what needs to be done until you start moving.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, I think those aren't the main goals. Like when you're trying to become a coach, Your goal isn't, I want to hire a mentor. I want to have to go take another training program. You want to go and you want to go coach people, right? So take action on your goal. Don't take action on your fear.
Ooh, dang. She said, take action on your goal. Don't take action on your fears. And I think that's a great question to ask yourself as well. As we're talking like that, that's a great question. Am I taking action towards my goals or am I taking action towards my fears? And I want you to reflect on your last year. If you look at your actions and your decisions you made, were you acting towards your goals or were you acting towards fear? And then wondering why you find yourself spinning your wheels. I think we find ourselves in a fear-based society telling you, because you have so many people around you telling you can't do this, you have to have this certification, or
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. I see it in my field too, where you have the therapists that are like, you can't charge that much money. That's just way too much. You're not worth that much money because I don't charge that much money and I've been doing this longer than you. And you know what the difference between the two people is? Their belief about themselves and their worth, right? I mean, really, when it comes down to it, I mean, and if all of us just believed that we are worth a little bit more and our time was worth a little bit more, I mean, it would elevate the whole field and you can apply that to anything, right? But I mean, that's where it really comes down to who you surround yourself with, right? What belief system you surround yourself with, what kind of information you're feeding yourself. And also, like you were saying, looking back on how far you have come, right? So that it doesn't just feel like you're just going uphill all the time, but that you're like celebrating how far that you've come, right? And what you've accomplished, because that is going to continue to motivate you and inspire you to overcome every obstacle in front of you. It's just see how far you've come. Look at how you handled the obstacle that was just behind you, right? And knowing that you can apply that to every obstacle in front of you.
man, I love that. I love that. That's awesome. So powerful. So, all right, I want y'all to have this little, this is like question for, reflection here. As we are talking about, those obstacles, what might this obstacle be trying to show me? I think it's a powerful question. Is what are your obstacles trying to show you? Can I grow a little bit more? Do it like Molly said. Do I just need to have that simply a better belief in myself? Am I surrounding myself with people that just because they don't believe in themselves have maybe made me not believe in myself? I think that's a great question to ask yourself as you are starting to identify some of these obstacles in our lives.
Yeah, and how can I make it more simple? If it is too complicated, maybe I really need to cut it down to even smaller habits or goals, right? How can I make it more simple and easy for myself?
Man, that's powerful. I love that. Yeah, it's a great, one of those great takeaways. I love, like Molly said right there, is, can I break these obstacles down? How can I make things simpler? How can I maybe find some joy along the process, right? How can I gamify it in a way? I love that.
Hmm. Yeah, they talk about atomic habits, talks about like habit stacking, right? Like if you want to adopt a new habit, put it right after a habit that you already have. So like brushing your teeth in the morning. If you want to start working out, right, stack it right but after when you brush your teeth so that you're going to already have this habit formed and now you're adding a new habit to it, right? And then it's more likely to stick because it's just following a habit that you have already right built into your schedule, which is, I mean, it's ingenious. I mean, I think that's just a great way to kind of start a cascade of positive habits.
Man, I love that. That's so powerful. All right, you guys. Well, man, me and Molly, we're super thankful you all joined us here today. We actually have a worksheet for you today. So I'm actually going to take that worksheet to, those questions that I asked in here, you can answer those questions in reflection. I'm going to have a Google sheet here. That's going to be at the bottom of this post in the comments. So make sure you click that sheet, fill out that form. We'll send you that sheet so you can answer these questions in reflection. You'll also get the habits one as well, and we'll add you to our email list so you can make sure the next time we have a live, I can actually send you that form before our live, and you can follow along with us as well. But I really want you guys to hear this. Before as we are talking about these habits, I want you to realize that obstacles aren't that stop sign. They just mean to slow down, look closer, and allow yourself to grow. I think that's a super powerful statement I want you to hold on to, realizing, like Molly said, take those little steps, trust the process, and realize that you have the power now to change your life. I want you to hear that today.
Yeah, sometimes the obstacle is the deer crossing or the road may be slippery, right?
So true. So many deer around here. So, all right, you guys, I want to give Molly an opportunity to tell you about something awesome and amazing that I was fortunate to take a part of. It's her Restart program. I am living proof of it. It has changed my life mentally, physically, and emotionally. I'm telling you, food has that power if you're using it the right way. And I want to allow her to share a little bit what's coming up here pretty soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. So it's a 5 week whole food challenge, is what I like to call it. It starts January 16th. It will go for 5 Fridays in a row, Friday at 10. And you get education, you will get the support of a group, and everyone will be going through essentially a sugar detox together. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's not just sugar though. It's processed foods. It's artificial stuff. It's all the things that really cause inflammation and dysbiosis and imbalance in our bodies. You take an assessment before you start the detox to see where you're at, and we don't realize how many issues mentally, physically, emotionally stem from our food. Whether it's acne, whether it's mood swings, whether it's inflamed joints, bad sleep, bad breath, so much of our stuff is directly related to the food that we are consuming. And I think this is a great way for someone who is just starting their health journey, right? Like they don't know where to start. They, maybe have gone to the gym and they're not seeing results. I mean, this is a way to really learn what kind of food to put in your body, what kind of fuel to put in your body, to lead to really good outcomes and a reduction of symptoms. I suggest this to anyone before you start doing a keto diet or paleo or get on a GLP-1 or anything that is going to be just different than the way that we were designed to eat. Do this first and then see what kind of symptoms that you're having. Because, I mean, so many of the things I was struggling with, like sleep and energy throughout the day, irritability, just inflammation in my body and bloating was related to sugar and processed foods. And I think we know this, but I mean, you really get to feel the results of this, and it's insane. I mean, everyone who's gone through it has only had positive results. Now, it isn't for the faint of heart. It is difficult. However, doing it in a group where you are having weekly accountability and support and education, and humor, right? Like there's so much humor and laughing because we're all kind of feeling at times not so great. But it's only 3 weeks of the actual detox. And that 3 weeks, it flies by, and you are learning so much about yourself and what you're capable of and what real food actually tastes like. I mean, I started cooking way more for myself going through this program, trying to eat whole food, and you just learn how your body feels different. So we're starting January 16th. If you want to jump in, I would love to have you in this container. It's going to be, we're going to have between 6 and 8. We're going to cap it at 8 people. It's fully online. It's going to be 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, but you can join from anywhere in the country. And I think it's just a great way, especially if we're still in the new part of the year, for you to just start that health journey, to take that action step and really get closer to your goals, to see the results. And maybe you're just trying to lose weight, but maybe that isn't your focus. And that is a result of doing this program. People have lost weight. It is, it just happens when you are reducing inflammation. So if you want more information, Sam's going to post a link, so you can, I think it'll take you to a form and you can kind of learn the dates and the costs and all of that. But I just found it tremendously helpful myself, when I was kind of leading others through this, that going through a sugar detox, processed food detox is just so amazing.
Yes, I can tell you, it has been a game changer for me. It has changed my life, and I know it will do that same thing for you. So I'm gonna make it super simple for you guys as well. I'm gonna post that same link down in the comments below. So we're gonna have that link, two links in there, a link to get the worksheet to set your habits, identify your habits, and we're gonna talk about your obstacles. And you can guys can add y'all to our email list, and then we're also gonna have Molly's restart link. So make sure you click both of those links. Get registered now. Those spots will fill up quickly. So make sure like we talked about today, make this simple. If you find nutrition something challenging, this is a simple way to do it. So I'm super excited you guys are here. Thank y'all for joining us so much. Realize that today, I want to leave you with this. Realize that, like we talked about, obstacles aren't a stopping sign. It's just simply feedback. But most importantly, I want you to realize that today you have the power to change your life. What would you like to leave the listeners with, Molly?
Absolutely. You have the power to change your life. It is all from your belief system. And you can take, even when you don't think you can take a step, there is something that you can do today. It's going to take you one step closer toward your goals. It's just asking yourself, am I ready? Right? What's holding me back?
Perfect. All right, you guys, y'all take care.